this time book fans, okay, and fans of horror novels. All right, so even though this channel has pretty much turned into a music channel, I do want to talk about books, especially like the Stephen King books that I've read. There are many videos here on this channel about that, and also other genres, especially horror. Okay, so and also the real reason I wanted to do this because whenever you search for horror novel recommendations, you inevitably come up with two things: Stephen King lists, of which I have made one myself. Link in the description below, or uh, videos made by young women who are talking about spooky reads, spooky books and autumnal reads or paranormal romance or that kind of stuff. They rarely ever talk about actual real horror books. And in fact, I wanted to name this video um, real horror books recommendations, but I didn't want to clickbait anybody into thinking that these were true stories. These are all novels, okay? So let's get started. All of these are actual, real, in the genre horror novels that are going to rip your throat out, all right? So there's no softies here. Let's get started. In no particular order, and these are 13 books. They're not my top 13 or anything like that, where the last one is the best one. Forget about that. These are just 13 great horror novel recommendations. We will start with this one, Carrion Comfort by Dan Simmons, okay? And Dan Simmons is an author that has written in several genres, historical fiction, science fiction, horror, which is where he started. And as you can see, this is a chunker of a book. And horror does not usually work that well in the long form. I think it gets lost, but here it does. This is in paperback, more than 800 pages. And I can't. It's about people that have mind control powers. All right, and some people confuse this with a vampire novel. It is not. But anyway, Dan Simmons really knows how to weave a story. It really, really flows well. It does drag a little bit, inevitably with this type of book, but the horror is there. When it comes, it comes. Okay. Let's go to the next one. This one may be very hard to find, or rather a bit hard to find, because as far as I know, it's out of print. And it is an anthology series called Dark Gods by T.E.D. Klein. Not Ted Klein, T.E.D. Klein. Right there. This is a collection of 4 horror stories, or rather, well, they could be considered either novellas or short stories. Children of the Kingdom, Petey, Black Man with a Horn, and Nail Man's God. Okay? Really, really good stuff. T.E.D. Klein. That will be the only anthology here. Here from an author that really knows how to rip your throat out, it is Joe R. Lansdale with The NIGHTRUNNERS. Okay. And yes, this creature here features in the book, who is the god of all sharp things, right there. The NIGHTRUNNERS are coming, okay? Just could also call it in the splatterpunk genre, you could say. Let's now move on with a classic, an author that was very influential to Stephen King. It was Richard Matheson. Here's my Spanish language copy of Hell House, okay? It's in Spanish because I live here in Mexico, and this is where I bought it. And this is, in my opinion, probably the best, or one of the best, haunted house stories ever made. All right, not to be confused with The Legend of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is Hell House by Richard Matheson, and where Hill House is very subtle, this one really brings the horror. Okay, highly recommend it. It's a short book; you'll get through it easily. And holy crap, this next one. This is a modern horror novel, and it's about the kids. And kids, when portrayed sometimes in fiction, it's a very rosy colored view of childhood. Not the case here with The Troop by Nick Cutter, which does have a blurb right there by Stephen King. The Troop scared the hell out of me, and I couldn't put it down. This old school horror at its best, and boy, is that true. Highly recommended. About a troop of Boy Scouts that go to an island and have to face, you know, a horror right there on that island. Okay, The Troop, highly recommended. One from the 80s, I believe, and this one kind of ties in with, the theme of all my other videos, heavy metal. Here we have The Scream, here by John Skipp and Craig Spector, who were pioneers in that splatterpunk genre. This is not really a splatterpunk novel, but it does bring the horror. It is about a rock group, that has a very dark origins right there. The Scream. One of the cool things about this particular paperback edition is that it has. Let me see. Oh yes, it's still here. A fold out right there. The rock band here is called The Scream, precisely. Okay. There we go. Recommended also by Skip Inspector. One that you all probably have already read and know about, but I just have to include it here because it's so fucking good. It's been made into a movie, and it's usually categorized as a thriller, but it is all out horror. It is Hannibal by Thomas Harris. Okay, this will be the third in that Hannibal Lecter trilogy. I have read Red Dragon, also Silence of the Lambs, both very good, but this is where the horror really comes. Expertly written. I mean, this is a fine-tuned novel that is almost surgical in its precision. Excuse me. All right, Hannibal, highly recommended. Even though people call it a thriller, but it's really a horror novel in my opinion. Another one that has also been turned into a movie by an author that started out as a horror writer, and then he moved on to, some really weird shit. Right there, it's The Hunger by Whitley Strieber, and yes, this is the movie tie-in paperback version. We can drink. A vampire novel, which gives a little bit of a twist on the vampire genre. Examining what it's really like to be an immortal, okay, and to have that hunger. Okay, by Whitley Strieber, who later went on to write books about alien abduction because he claimed he had been abducted himself. Okay, another one here by Dan Simmons, which we also saw with Carrion Comfort. This was his first novel, and he won the World Fantasy Award for it. It is Song of Kali. And I promise you, after reading this novel, you will never look at India again, or those, or rather, I believe it is in New Delhi where it is set. But it is a novel set over there in India about an author, or rather a literary agent or representative that goes in search of a poet, a Hindu poet, over there in India. Okay, and there he encounters the cult of Kali. All right, and it is really good stuff here. Great horror. Like I said, this was his first book, and he came out the gates, on fire. Okay, and the last three have also been adapted into films, into good films, in my opinion. Here, the first one is The Ruins by Scott Smith. This is my Spanish language copy, which is Ladrina's great cover right there. And it is about a group of tourists, young tourists who come to Mexico precisely, and they encounter some ruins, and in those ruins, there is a malevolent force which traps them there. Both the book and the movie are very good. I do prefer the book a little bit by a hair, but it is, great body horror here. The Ruins. A novel that is a bit more on the subtle side when it comes to vampirism. It is Let Me In. This is my Spanish language copy, but it says right here, Let Me In on the bottom, because as you know, they wanted to. This is the movie tie-in version cover about a vampire that became a vampire while they were very young, so they stopped growing, as you can see. It has been adapted twice into film, Swedish version and in the American version. Both are very, very good. I'm not going to go into which one I like best because both are very good and both are recommended. But the book is highly, highly recommended. Again, a fresh take on vampirism. Here by the author with his John Ajvide Lindqvist, which I believe is how you pronounce it. Probably not. Okay, Let Me In. Really good stuff. The last one is a total classic, okay? And it's kind of like a one that should be obligatory reading for any horror novel fan. It is Rosemary's Baby, and this is my Spanish language copy called La Semilla del Diablo, which means the Devil's Seed, which I think is a pretty cool title also. By Ira Levin, The Devil's Seed. Of course, it's been adapted into a film directed by Roman Polanski, an excellent film, which is extremely faithful to the book. This is one of the cases, unlike some of the others that I mentioned here, where there are some changes. This one is the movie is extremely faithful to the book. So you're not really getting any surprises. If you read this, you're just going to see the story from like a different, I'm not going to say perspective, just a different feel for the story because you're reading it. All right, so that is Rosemary's Baby, La Semilla del Diablo. Pretty cool. The last one of my recommendations, I don't have a physical copy of because I heard it as an audiobook. Okay, it is Ghoul by Brian Keene. Not the Ghoul, just Ghoul. Okay, and this is about a ghoul, a creature that eats the dead, eats corpses. And it's very much like it in the sense that there's a supernatural force that lives underground, and a group of kids have to face this force. Now, it is much shorter than it, and it takes, unlike like I mentioned before, unlike as what Stephen King does is he has a very rosy-colored view of childhood, and he loves to write about kids. These are kids, young teenagers. The way they really, really are, and I should remember I used to be a young teenager myself, and the way they fight amongst each other, the way they talk, this author Brian Keene really has more his finger on the pulse of that age, I believe, than Stephen King does. Okay, because Stephen King does tend to romanticize childhood. These are kids that are going up against this ghoul, and nobody believes them. They have to. There's a bit of a, you could call it a bit of a Scooby-Doo vibe to it, but of course it is complete and total horror. And it has a fantastic ending. I really, really liked it. It's a short a read or a listen if you happen to listen to it on audiobook. I am going to put the title, the book cover over here. Okay, if you want to search for it. Ghoul by Brian Keene. All right, well, there you go. All of these are horror novels. They're not paranormal romance. They're not spooky reads for October or anything like that. Just grab you by the throat horror novels. All of them are recommended, and let me know if you've read any of these. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and keep reading, guys.